All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Jason Lunden. I am the lead for the Endurance Athlete Division. And first, before I dive into our topic today, I'm going to address the elephant in the room in terms of what, for those of you watching, what happened to my face. No, Mitch Babcock did not punch me for being him dressing up for his Halloween. This past weekend, I hit a tree with my face snowboarding. So luckily, no concussion, no fractures, just a little abrasion in the black eye. So diving into today's topic, minimum dose endurance athlete division. So this time of year, especially for us in the north, a lot of it is going to be the off season for our endurance athletes, for our runners and cyclists. Unless they have an indoor track season or they're doing ultras that are over snow, like the Iditarod, and etc. But the majority of our patients or athletes, it's going to be their off season. So the question is what is the minimum dose of training that they can do over the off season to maintain their aerobic capacity or aerobic fitness? And then question two for our runners is if they are doing a different mode of exercise, what's the minimum dose of impact that they can do to maintain their capacity or their bone health for running? So first, diving into aerobic capacity or aerobic fitness. Spearing et al. Did a really nice review article a few years ago in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, mainly going off of the studies by Hopkins. And what Hopkins did was look at different training variables for a group of athletes that was first untrained, and then he trained them up to maximize their VO2 max in a short amount of time, and then looked at if they, with manipulating those training variables, what was the minimum that they could do to maintain that VO2 max or aerobic capacity. And so he manipulated frequency of training, volume of training, and intensity of training. And what they found is with manipulating just the frequency of training down from 6 days a week to 2 days a week, that was the minimum in terms of reducing the frequency of training, as long as the volume and intensity of those training sessions remain the same. And all training sessions were the same duration and intensity in terms of what these athletes were training at. As far as volume, they were able to reduce the volume by 33% and maintain what they termed long endurance VO2. So basically being able to maintain training at 85% of VO2 max. So typically 1 to 3 hours for these athletes at 85%. They were able to reduce the volume but maintain the frequency and the intensity of those workouts by 33% and still maintain that long endurance. For short endurance, which is basically the ability to maintain VO2 max at 100%, so very short durations, not typically what our endurance athletes are doing, they're actually able to reduce the volume by as much as 66% and still maintain aerobic capacity. And then the interesting thing is when they tried to manipulate intensity, really decreasing intensity by any amount did not result in maintaining aerobic capacity. So intensity really matters when trying to maintain capacity. So the takeaways from this, from an aerobic capacity, is that for endurance athletes who are in their off season and then not really doing any cross training, they can either reduce their frequency of training by to as little as 2 sessions per week, as long as they're maintaining the volume and intensity of those workouts, or reduce their overall volume by 33%, while again maintaining frequency and intensity of those workouts. But what often happens in the off season, especially for us here up north, is the athletes are transitioning to a different mode of endurance training, namely Nordic skiing, which I'm dressed for going out right after this today. And so often they're certainly not losing aerobic capacity. They're probably building aerobic capacity over their off season. But for the runners, they're not getting any impact during that season. So what can happen is when they are transitioning back into running, they haven't maintained that capacity of the bone and tendon to withstand impact, and so they either have to greatly reduce their training volume from a running perspective to ease back into the season, or they develop a running-related injury, which is unfortunately more often the case. And then for our cyclists, they just don't have time on the bike in the position on the bike. So again, they don't maintain that capacity to sustain that position. So they too will have to reduce their volume on the bike if they're not doing any cycling over the off season. Most cyclists are on the trainer, but for those of folks that are switching to just purely Nordic skiing and not being on the bike at all, they do need to get some time on the bike on the over the off season to maintain that capacity to endure that position. But speaking specifically to impact for our runners, what is the minimum amount of impact that they need to maintain over the off season to really maintain bone health? And I have not been able to find anything in the literature pertaining to runners and athletes specifically, but there is a lot in the literature looking at older adults and maintaining bone mineral density. So we're going to dive into 2 research articles on that, and then try to adapt that information to what we're going to recommend for our runners. And so the first article is a randomized controlled trial by Ballot and colleagues, and they took postmenopausal women and had 3 treatment groups. So one was a control where they just maintained normal activity level, which was basically sedentary. Second group was adding in 3 days a week of strength training with some cardio. And then third group was adding in the strength training and cardio, but then on top of that, adding in high impact exercise, or what they call high impact exercise. And what they found is after 6 months of that, again, just 3 times per week, is as you would guess, the control group, their bone mineral density actually decreased over that time period. But for the group that was doing the strength training, plus high impact, their bone mineral density was at the very least maintained, if not increased for that 6-month period. And the group that did the high impact exercise along with the strength training, and the high impact exercise was jump rope, and just 15 minutes of jump rope twice a week on those training sessions, actually had much greater result gains in bone mineral density than those that did not do the impact exercise. So again, in case where they're calling jump rope as a high impact exercise, and it was shown to be able to increase bone mineral density. Now, again, most of those studies are in females, but there is another study by Daly and colleagues that looked at older adult men, so middle-aged to older adult men, so 50 to 79 year olds. And similar study where they had, again, 3 treatment arms, control group that didn't change anything, a group that did resistance training 3 days a week, and then a group that did resistance training plus high impact exercise 3 days a week. And for that high impact exercise, it was it could jump rope. They had several different modes of exercise for their high impact exercise, but it was basically 3 different exercises and doing 3 sets of 10 to 20 reps of that exercise. So mainly drop jumps, side to side leaping or hopping, and squat jumps. And what they found with this study for men is that again, the frequency of training made a difference. So those men that maintained their training schedule of at least 2 sessions per week were able to maintain bone mineral density. And more importantly, those men that also had the high impact training, that's where the money really was in the intervention, and that was where the best results were. So again, adding in high impact exercise is really essential for maintaining bone health, at least in middle-aged and older adults. So again, we don't have a study specifically on our endurance athletes. We're looking at what's the minimum dose for maintaining bone health, but we'll infer, which is a little bit tricky, from these studies on older adults, that at the very least we'd be getting those results with athletes. It is a big assumption, but it's what we're going with, and what anecdotally has worked really well for me with working with my athletes. So again, minimum dose is going to be probably 3 sets of 10 to 20 repetitions of some sort of jumping. So drop jumps, squat jumps, leaping or hopping, or 2-3 sessions of 15 minutes of running or jump rope. Again, maintain capacity for bone health and by inferring tendon health as well. So it's a takeaway for minimum dose for endurance athletes in the off season, which certainly can be applied to for those endurance athletes that are injured to reduce training volume but want to maintain their capacity. So for aerobic capacity, that's going to be maintaining frequency of training of at least 2 sessions per week, but maintaining the volume of those training sessions and intensity of those training sessions, or decreasing their overall volume by 33%, but maintaining the intensity and frequency of those training sessions, and they'll maintain that aerobic capacity. And then for bone health, for our runners who aren't running in the off season, doing 3 sessions per week of either jump rope or plyometric activity. So squat jumps or tuck jumps, drop jumps, and hopping is the minimum. So what does this look like in terms of recommended to our patients? Is one, we need to maintain intensity, so making sure that they are doing interval training and really mimicking what they've done during the season. So whether that's work to rest ratio of 1 to 2, or more doing Tabata of 2 to 1, maintaining that intensity, but being able to drop their volume by 33% or frequency down to 2 days per week. And then I always usually recommend athletes either do 15 minutes of running 3 times per week, or 15 minutes of jump rope 3 times per week. And then not forgetting to also encourage our cyclists, if they're not doing any training on the bike in the off season and they're just skiing, Nordic skiing, to get some time on the bike too, so that they can maintain that capacity to endure their positioning on the bike. All right, so before I leave you, just some upcoming events from the Endurance Athlete Division. Our next cohort of Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner Online is starting next week. Unfortunately, that is sold out. So hop on to our cohort 2 for 2025, which starts in March. Those cohorts often sell out. So if you're interested in joining us for that, don't dilly-dally and make sure you get signed up. And then for Rehabilitation Injured Live, a Runner Live, we're going to be in Colorado the first week of February. That course is very close to selling out. So if you're looking to join us for that, sign up sooner than later. And then for our next professional bike fitting cert course is going to be towards the end of February down in Arizona. So if you're looking to get some sunshine, have some fun, and learn a great skill set to work with your cyclists, join us down in Tempe in February. hope everyone has a spectacular weekend, gets outside and does something fun, and we'll hopefully see you all soon. Bye.